In this exercise, we're going to fix the size of those bars above and below the word sheriff because I messed up here. The top or the bottom or whatever this is of the sideways I is not supposed to be aligned to the top of the first F, but rather the top of the second F. Now, the reason I'm leaving this mistake in place is because I want you to understand how these internal constraints work and how to fix problems like these and how not to fix problems. Because as you're about to see in a moment, you can't do it directly inside Reposé. You have to take two swings at it. I've saved my progress as all textures are go.psd, and I'm going to double click on the 3D layer thumbnail to bring up the 3D panel, and then I'll click on the holes mesh to make sure it's active because that's the mesh that contains these internal constraints. Then I'll drop down to this little R icon, click on it in order to bring up the Reposé dialog box. And now let's see what happens if I go ahead and scale one of these objects. I'm going to click on the scale the 3D constraint tool right there. And I'm going to click on this bottom one. And I could just drag if I wanted to, or I could change that X value. Let's say I decide to take it up to 1.5. Notice what happens. That scales this thing to 150% of its former size, but it also plays with the texture. It also moves the texture outward. So we've turned the bar into a kind of scary, strange mouth. That's definitely not something we want. So what you really want to do is click on the delete button in order to get rid of that constraint. And then we're going to have to, in a separate pass here, go ahead and grab the top bar by clicking on it. Make sure you don't drag or anything like that. And then click delete in order to get rid of it as well. Now you might say, well, there go our bars. How in the world do we get them back? Well, that's why I said we're going to have to take a second pass. One pass inside Reposé to get rid of the bars, click OK, another pass of editing inside Reposé in order to put the bars back in place. But first, we need to scale them as paths inside the paths panel so that we're not doing any damage whatsoever to our 3D scene. So switch to the paths panel. There's my bars to fix path outlines sitting there waiting for me. Very hard to see them on screen because of the way path outlines are displayed in Photoshop CS5. Many users, by the way, if you think this is crazy, that they're basically invisible, you're not the only one. Lots and lots of users have complained about this one. Hopefully, we'll see it addressed in the future. I'm going to switch to the direct selection tool or the wide arrow tool. Now, I can barely see the right side of the top bar, so I'm going to use my wide arrow tool to marquee fully around it, like so, and then I'll drop all the way down so I can't help but select the right side of the bottom path as well. And sure enough, it's selected. You can barely see it once again, but it's there. And now I'm going to press Shift right arrow 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, let's say. And I'm counting because I need to make sure to do the same thing on the other side. I'll marquee from about here so that I can't help but snatch the left sides of both of the bars and drag all the way down to this location. And I do indeed have the left sides, all those anchor points, and I'll press Shift left arrow this time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Alrighty, let's switch back to the black arrow tool, and I'll click on one of the paths, and I can't even see it. I'll just go ahead and marquee around both the paths and hope for the best. And I think I've selected them. All right, now let's go back to the layers panel. The rear layer is selected. Holes is selected, the holes mesh. So now I'll drop down once again to the little R icon and click on it in order to bring up the Reposé dialog box. So very important that you have your path outline selected if you're working along with me. And then I want you to click on the Add Path button in order to add both of those paths to the internal constraints. You'll have to wait a moment for Reposé to do its thing. Now, it looks like they're coming in as holes, but they're not. They're coming in as active paths, and they're pressing into the star surface, and they're basically digging into the background. That's not what we want. So using one of these tools, click on a path outline. Be sure not to drag. We don't want any little drag because that'll move it around and mess up the texture and everything. Even if it's a hole, if you move that path around, you're going to drag the texture along with you. You're going to get those kind of liquefy effects. Anyway, I'm going to change the type from active to hole and then wait for that change to complete. And as soon as I get my cursor back, I'll click on the top path like so. And then I'll change its type from active to hole as well. And then I'll click the OK button in order to apply my modifications. So that's how, just in case something like this happens to you, that's how you go about modifying the size and shape of your internal constraints when working with Reposé inside Photoshop.